Hey, welcome to Cool Identity. This is your host, Fred Patterson, and today I just want to talk shortly about having a data dictionary. So, as an identity access management engineer or identity governance engineer, um, you need to be able to have a document to go to that maps out your data, where it's stored at, who's your identity vault, what your syntax and restrictions are, and who's sending the data, who owns the data, how is it being transformed, etc. And so, uh, more than likely, most customers are going to have this over time. But in starting out with your identity vault or in diving in and helping cleaning up your data, you want to be able to drive your identity system with a well documented format and structure to help drive consistency and to help make sure your data lines up and to help identify either existing issues or prevent future issues depending on where you are in rolling out your identity system. And so having a data dictionary is a key part of that. You'll notice in my column A, I have your identity vault. So in the microfocus realm, this is going to be your eDirectory data store, or your DirectSmell identity vault, or identity management identity vault. How else can we say it? I'm sure there's a few more out there. You've got maybe what your syntaxes are, and then maybe you have an HR system where you've got a CSV file that comes in that you process. Maybe you have an HR system where you're sending out a CSV file. Maybe you have Active Directory. Well, more than likely you do. And then let's say you have a non-employee form that you're using to help create new users that are non-employees that don't go through the normal HR system. So, simple use case, just an example of how you might start documenting if you haven't already, or some ideas as far as helping the data flow a little bit. So I highly recommend you have a column that talks about your syntax, what your limits are. I don't know if surname is 64 characters or not, but I know that company is. In fact, if you are sending your company name from your non-employee form and you're sending it to AD, you need to make sure that you don't have a character length over 64 characters or it's going to fail. And so I'll get into, if your non-employee form is creating a user, it has a company name, they're a contractor, and you're writing it to your identity vault doesn't have a 64 character limit, but AD does, you're going to have a big issue when you're writing to AD. And so you want to make sure that you know what your restrictions are, what your syntax is, what your format is for the different data types, for the different values coming in. And just want to stress that one of the most important components to this is documenting who's authoritative. So like in this column header, HR CSV in, I put it as green. And, green means, I don't know what green means. It means go. But, maybe that's your symbolic representation of, hey, I'm authoritative. I'm sending the data in, I own this data, and you have no right to change it without getting it from me. And so you can specify that and help enforce that through the identity manager policies, drivers, configuration, etc. And so this is a huge help in being able to document that. Now it's like, okay, even though the male attribute even though AD system in itself is generally receiving your data, maybe it has a ownership. Where's my format? Maybe the mail attribute comes from Active Directory from Exchange, and it's authoritative, and it pushes out to the HR CSV, and it pushes out to the identity vault. In the identity vault, it's called internet email address. That's the attribute name. In the CSV header, it's mail for the HR output in order to update the HR system with the email address. But AD owns that attribute, and so it's a matter of, okay, how do we trigger populating that to then have it come back into the identity vault and into the HR system. But who owns that? And you can help control that data flow. So it's important documenting, okay, who owns this, who authors it, and okay, we need to document that so that we can then have our policies align up with that and help drive it. Hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can do to document your environment, to have a source that you can go to keep it updated. I consider it a living document. It should, as you're making changes, this document should be changed in accordance to that. And then it's your go-to as far as helping develop your workflows, develop your business processes of, okay, we're connecting in a new system. Okay, this is the data they have. They need to receive email address. Okay, they're also sending a badge number. And okay, who's all receiving that? Where don't we want that to go? Hey, here's a system that records PII data, and it sends PII data. Where do we want that stored? Where do we have to make sure we have it secure? Can we store that securely in the identity vault where replication and encryption is used, and we make sure that only persons that can read it have access to that attribute? And who else are we going to be sending that to? What are our risks if we send it? And so you can document all of that ahead of time, and then you can, from there, having it documented, you can then say, okay, now it's time to implement. And you should be able to, regardless of what identity management system you're using, you should be able to drive forward with, okay, we need this, 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 and this. All right, go at it. Here's our requirement. It should take this long, and there we go. So very important to keep in mind to have a data dictionary, keep it up to date. Documentation goes a long ways, especially if you're troubleshooting something or you're implementing a new solution. If your documentation is not up to date, or if it's not documented, a lot of times it's so easy to step over yourself, cause data issues, and cause possible system interruption, right? So document. It may seem complex. It may seem quite simple. But regardless of, if you have, 60 different connected systems, your applications that you're interfacing with, and you've got data going every which way, it's going to be a lot easier if you have it documented rather than, okay, what spaghetti mess am I getting into with where's my data going, who's stepping on top of it. And it's really nice to be able to organize, okay, this type of data, it's coming from maybe 2 or 3 systems, not 30, right? Sometimes we have to have multiple inputs depending on the type of users, and so HR may be a source system for one, a non-employee form, or if you're a university, a student form, or etc. And you may have banner to pull in employee or to pull in students. You may have SAP or Workday or something like that to pull in employees. And so you may have multiple source systems. And so documenting that is definitely going to help you out to keep all of it straight, and as a reminder of where your data is and who owns it, and what should be happening in your policies, and so happy coding, right? But happy planning. The more you plan out, the better. I know of one organization that thought that they'd planned out quite a bit, but we didn't really dive into the nitty-gritty details, and it took extra months in getting into that. And so the more people you involve as far as application owners, to really dive in and to identify what data you need access to, getting access to it in a consistent format, and then so that you can ingest that, saves you a lot more time on getting the project up and going. So best wishes, happy coding, and have a great day.